I checked my watch. 7:30 p.m. The time for our reservation. Sarah had promised that this anniversary would be special. It wasn't just any anniversary, it was our 5th. I could feel my heart racing as I watched her get ready in the bathroom. A smile tugged at my lips. I loved her so much. Ready? I called, smoothing out the sleeves of my shirt. She stepped out of the bathroom, wearing the dress I loved, the one she wore on our first date. She looked incredible, but something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and the way she adjusted the strap of her dress made me question if she was really here with me. Yeah, she replied quietly, brushing past me to grab her purse from the counter. There was a faint tension in the air, a distance I hadn't noticed before. I shook it off. Maybe she was just tired. Everything okay? I asked, reaching out to touch her arm. She flinched slightly, but covered it quickly with a smile. Of course. Let's go. We headed to the restaurant, but the silence between us grew thicker with every passing minute. I kept stealing glances at her, wondering if she was feeling the same way. She didn't touch her wine. She barely ate anything. Normally, Sarah loved the food here. Something was wrong, and I could feel it deep inside, like a knot in my stomach I couldn't undo. Sarah, you're not yourself tonight, I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice cracked a little. She looked up, her eyes darkening. I'm fine. Really? But she didn't meet my gaze for long. Instead, she fiddled with her glass, her lips tight. The waiter came by, asking if we wanted dessert. I was about to decline, but my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a simple notification, but the text made my blood run cold. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I can't believe you still don't know. She's with me now. I stared at the screen, feeling my heart drop into my stomach. I looked up at Sarah, but she was already turning her face away, her lips set in a thin line. The air between us felt colder than it had ever been. I couldn't stop staring at the phone screen. The words seemed to blur, then refocus. She's with me now. My pulse thudded in my ears. My hand shook as I set the phone down on the table, trying to act normal. Trying to act like everything wasn't falling apart in front of me. Sarah was still focused on her wine glass, swirling it slowly. She didn't even notice how tightly I was gripping the edge of the table. My mind raced. Could this be some kind of mistake? But my gut told me otherwise. I knew something had been off tonight. I had felt it in the way Sarah barely looked at me, in the way she'd been distant these past few weeks. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Who is this? I asked, my voice low, barely a whisper. Sarah looked up slowly, her face shifting, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read passing across her eyes. What are you talking about? She asked, but her voice sounded almost too calm, too practiced. I picked up the phone and slid it across the table to her. Her eyes widened when she saw the text. I saw the guilt flash across her face, like a light flickering out. It was enough. I didn't need any more answers. Who is he? I repeated, louder this time. My hand trembled on the table, my heart pounding. She looked down at her glass, not meeting my gaze. David, it's not what you think. I couldn't take it. Not what I think. What am I supposed to think, Sarah? Tell me. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing, but it wasn't from excitement anymore. It was pure panic. The kind of panic you get when you realize your entire life is about to shatter. She closed her eyes for a long moment, and when she opened them again, there was nothing left of the woman I thought I knew. It's Ethan, she said quietly, like it was no big deal. I'm sorry, but I've been seeing him for the last few months. The words hit me like a slap in the face. I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Ethan? The name rang in my ears. It was the last person I ever would have suspected. The guy from work. You've been with him, I said, more to myself than to her, my voice breaking. She nodded, but didn't look at me. It just happened. I didn't plan it, David. I felt my blood run cold. You're telling me you've been cheating on me this whole time? Our anniversary? Are you serious right now? Her eyes met mine, but there was no apology in them. No regret. Only a cold, distant look that I couldn't understand. I didn't want to hurt you, but It's been happening for a while now. I could feel the rage building up inside me, but it was a quiet kind of anger. The kind that makes you sick. How long? I managed to choke out. How long have you been lying to me, Sarah? She sighed, as if it was just another tired conversation. I didn't mean for things to go this way. But I don't love you anymore, David. The world around me felt like it was spinning. My hands were clammy, my mouth dry. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel what I was feeling. But all I could do was sit there, staring at the woman who'd once been everything to me, who was now a stranger. I don't love you anymore, she repeated, her voice almost too calm. And I don't think you'll ever understand. I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout. But instead, I stood up, leaving the table, leaving her there without another word. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out of there. The door slammed behind me as I stepped into the night air, and I didn't look back. I couldn't sit still. I paced in the living room, my mind racing 100 miles per hour. My heart still thudded painfully in my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make sense of the wreckage inside me. But I knew I had to confront her, Sarah. I had to hear her say it, say the words I couldn't bring myself to believe. I couldn't let her get away with this. The house was eerily quiet as I stormed upstairs. The door to our bedroom was closed, but I didn't knock. I pushed it open without hesitation. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands in her lap. She wasn't even surprised to see me. It was like she knew this moment was coming. I felt my fists clench at my sides, my knuckles white. We need to talk, I said, my voice low but steady. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her expression blank, like she had already prepared herself for this moment. Is it true? I asked, my voice rising a little. Is it really true? Have you been with him? Ethan? Sarah looked away, her eyes drifting to the window, as if she couldn't bear to look at me anymore. But she didn't deny it. That was all I needed to hear. I don't know what you want me to say, David, she replied softly, but there was no guilt in her voice. No shame. Just cold detachment. I stepped closer to her, my heart beating faster. What do you mean, you don't know what I want you to say? How about you explain why? Why destroy everything we had? She sighed, her shoulders slumping. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't want to hurt you. Then why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie to me for months? For months, Sarah. I stopped myself, my voice choking on the words. You promised me we were fine. That we were happy. I was unhappy, David. Her words came out flat, emotionless. I've been unhappy for a long time, and you wouldn't listen. You were always so wrapped up in your work, in your world, that you never noticed. I didn't want to keep pretending. I shook my head, the disbelief washing over me. You couldn't just talk to me? You couldn't have come to me first? You had to sneak around and betray me instead. She stood up then, her eyes hardening. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was suffocating. You were so busy with your life, and I needed something. I needed him. She paused, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe? I know it's wrong, David. I do. But I couldn't help myself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. This was a stranger standing in front of me, and it felt like my entire world was slipping away. Is that it then? It's just over? I asked, my voice shaking now. No apology, no remorse, just, I needed him? She didn't say anything at first. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry it had to be this way. I never wanted to hurt you. But it's too late. I'm not the same person anymore. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at her, trying to piece together the woman I thought I knew. The woman I loved. But there was nothing left. The truth was there in her eyes. She didn't care anymore. I turned and walked out, my legs heavy, my mind a mess of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't save us. Not anymore. And as I slammed the door behind me, I realized that was the last time I would ever look at her the same way again. I don't know how long I stood there, in the cold hallway, staring at the door that separated me from the woman I thought I loved. The woman who had just told me, without a hint of hesitation, that she didn't care anymore. It felt like my entire world had shattered in that one conversation. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something, broken something, anything to release this rage building up inside of me. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I just stood there, feeling numb, too numb to even feel the anger. It was like everything had been drained from me. I didn't go back into the bedroom. I couldn't. I didn't even know where to go. I paced the living room, my mind a whirlwind. Everything we'd shared, the late-night talks, the vacations, the anniversaries, had been a lie. I thought we were happy. But now, I realized that was just a dream I had been living. A lie she had let me believe. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was Jake. You good? I stared at the message for a while before responding. How could I even begin to explain what had happened? How could I tell him that everything in my life had just been torn apart? I typed back, my hands shaking. No. I'm not okay. It's over. She's been with someone else. Seconds passed before Jake's response came through. What the hell? You need to talk? I'm here, man. I stared at the screen. I needed to talk, but not to him. Not yet. I needed to be alone. I couldn't face anyone, not even my best friend. I couldn't explain this pain, this betrayal to anyone. Not yet. I put the phone down and walked to the kitchen. My hands grabbed the first thing they could find, the whiskey bottle. I didn't even bother with a glass. Just poured it straight into my mouth, the burns spreading down my throat. It didn't numb the pain, not by a long shot, but it was something. I walked back to the living room and sank into the couch, staring blankly at the TV. I wasn't even watching it. My mind was replaying every moment with Sarah. The first time we met, the way her laugh made my heart skip. The way she'd look at me like I was her whole world. I thought it was real. I thought we were real. But now I knew better. She had been living a lie, and I had been too blind to see it. The hours dragged on. The more I thought about it, the more my chest tightened. I could feel my anger bubbling up again, this time more intense. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just walk away. She had done this to me. She owed me something, she owed me answers. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me. About what I would do with the wreckage of my life now that I knew the truth. I had a choice to make, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I needed to confront her again. I needed to know why. Was I that easy to replace? Was I that invisible to her? But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about her. It was about me, about my pride, my shattered trust, my broken heart. I stood up abruptly, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I couldn't go on like this, living in this void. Something had to be done. I couldn't just let her get away with it. She needed to feel the same pain I felt. I grabbed my phone again, this time dialing Ethan's number. He answered after 2 rings. Hello. His voice was too calm, too casual. Like he hadn't just destroyed my life. Ethan, I said, my voice cold, we need to talk. There was a slight pause on the other end, then a chuckle. About what? About Sarah, I said, my teeth gritted. I'm coming for you both. The words felt bitter on my tongue. I'm coming for you both. I said them as if I had any idea what I was going to do next. But the truth? I didn't. I had no plan. I just knew one thing. I needed to do something. I needed to make them feel the same pain that was ripping me apart. Ethan didn't respond right away. There was a long pause, like he was processing what I had just said. Then his voice came through, calm, almost amused. You really think you can just waltz in here and make this right, David? He asked, his tone mocking. My blood boiled. But I didn't back down. You think this is some joke? You've taken everything from me. My life, my trust, my wife. You think you can just walk away from this without consequences? He laughed again, and I could hear the arrogance in it. It's not like that, man. Sarah and I, don't you dare say her name. I cut him off, my words sharp. She's mine. She was mine. But now she's just part of the wreckage. And so are you. Ethan was silent for a moment. Then, As if he was bored with the conversation, he sighed. You should have seen this coming, David. She wasn't happy with you. She needed more. And you were too busy to notice. The words stung, but I couldn't let him see it. You don't get to talk like that. You don't get to make excuses for what you've done. I'm not letting you walk away from this. I hung up without saying another word. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand, the weight of the conversation sinking in. This wasn't enough. What I just said wasn't enough. He needed to know what it felt like to lose everything. And if Sarah wasn't going to feel it, then I would make Ethan feel it. But where did I even begin? What did I want from them? What did I expect to happen? It wasn't revenge in the way I wanted. It wasn't about causing them pain for the sake of hurting them. No, it was more about reclaiming something, my dignity, my pride, the parts of me that Sarah had taken without a second thought. I needed to take back control of my life. I grabbed my jacket and left the house. The cold night air hit my face as soon as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to calm the fire burning inside me. I found myself driving without thinking. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I needed to do something. I thought about Sarah, about the nights we spent together, the laughter, the quiet moments of comfort. How had it all gone so wrong? I could hear her voice in my head, the way she'd sounded when she told me she didn't love me anymore. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she had let me believe in something that wasn't real. The way she had let me love her, knowing she was never truly mine. I pulled into the parking lot of the building where Ethan worked. It wasn't far from my house. I hadn't planned this. I didn't even know why I was here. But I couldn't just let him get away with this. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Should I confront him in front of everyone? Call him out in the middle of his office? Should I humiliate him the way he had humiliated me? I stayed in the car, watching the building in the distance. I was seconds away from walking up to the door when my phone buzzed again. I checked it without thinking. It was a text from Sarah. David, please. Let's talk. I stared at the message, my mind reeling. She wanted to talk? After everything? After what she'd done? I didn't know what to feel anymore. The anger, the rage, it was still there. But now there was something else. A piece of me wanted to say yes. A piece of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could fix this. But I couldn't forget the truth. The truth that she had already made her choice. She'd chosen him. I put my phone down, turning the engine over. I wasn't here to fix anything. I wasn't here for a second chance. I was here to make sure they felt the same devastation that was tearing me apart. And I wouldn't stop until they did. It had been days since I'd left that message for Ethan, since I'd driven to his office and sat in the parking lot, trying to figure out what to do next. And yet, nothing had changed. The anger hadn't subsided. The betrayal still ate at me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. But as much as I wanted to act, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, life had a way of evening the score without me having to lift a finger. It wasn't until I received a call from Jake that I felt a shift. The phone buzzed on my kitchen counter, interrupting my thoughts. Jake, I answered, pressing the phone to my ear. Man, you're not going to believe this, he said, his voice low, almost cautious. What? I asked, trying to keep the irritation from creeping into my voice. Ethan, he continued, I just got a call from one of his buddies. It's not good. I felt a surge of curiosity mixed with a strange sense of satisfaction. What happened? He's been busted, Jake said, his voice thick with disbelief. Turns out he was juggling more than just you and Sarah. He's been hiding money, doing shady deals with some people from his past, and now, it's all coming to light. People are talking. It's a mess, man. I leaned against the counter, the words slowly sinking in. My heart skipped a beat. Ethan, the man who had shattered my world, was finally getting what was coming to him. The thought should have made me feel vindicated, but it didn't. Instead, it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Something horrible, but inevitable. How did you find out? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. One of his associates spilled. They're looking into everything now. Fraud, embezzlement, you name it. And now it's all coming down on him. The worst part? It looks like he's been using Sarah for cover, hiding things under her nose. My stomach churned. The thought of Ethan pulling Sarah into his mess made my blood boil. What's going to happen to him? I asked, though I already had a sense of where this was going. His career's shot, David. His life's falling apart. And honestly, I don't know if Sarah knows what she's gotten herself into yet. Jake paused, then added, "It's bad. Like really bad." I hung up the phone, the weight of it all pressing down on me. There was no sense of victory in this, no joy in knowing that karma had come for Ethan. He was unraveling just as I had hoped, but I didn't feel any better. It was like there was no satisfaction in watching him lose everything. What did it prove? That he had been the bad guy? I already knew that. But the hole inside me, the one that had been carved out by Sarah's betrayal, was still there. I stood up from the counter and walked to the window, staring out into the night. I was alone in the silence, and all I could hear was the low hum of the world moving on without me. I should have been happy, right? Shouldn't I have felt relief that my pain had been repaid in some way? But instead I felt empty. Ethan's downfall wasn't enough to heal me. It wasn't enough to undo the damage Sarah had caused. It wasn't enough to fill the space she had left in my life. And the worst part? I had no idea where I was going from here. The next day, I ran into Claire, Sarah's friend, on my way to work. Mia looked like she knew something had changed, but didn't say anything. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "You heard about Ethan, right?" I nodded, not knowing what to say. "Yeah." She looked at me with a sad, knowing expression. "I didn't know what to tell you when all of this was happening. But now I see it, it's all falling apart, just like you said." I swallowed hard, keeping my emotions in check. "Yeah. It's funny how things work out." Claire looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and guilt. "I'm sorry, David. I should have said something sooner. I just didn't know how." I shook my head. "It's not your fault. I had to see it for myself. It's just too much." She nodded. "You'll get through this. Just take it one day at a time." But as I walked away, I felt no comfort in her words. The thing about karma, about revenge, is that when it finally catches up with someone, it doesn't give you the peace you thought it would. It doesn't fill the emptiness inside of you. It just makes you realize how much time you've wasted, how much of your life you've given to the wrong people. Ethan's life was falling apart, but it didn't feel like justice. It just felt like more noise in the background of my own quiet misery. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that it wasn't about him. It wasn't about Sarah. It was about me. And I had to figure out how to heal from this, how to move forward, even if the past kept trying to drag me back. I spent the next few days in a haze, caught between the whirlwind of anger and the unsettling silence that had taken over my life. Ethan's fall from grace was everywhere, splashed across news outlets, whispered about in every corner of the office, and discussed in hushed tones by people I barely knew. But none of that made me feel any better. None of it changed the fact that Sarah, my Sarah, had betrayed me. She had chosen him over me, and now, the wreckage of it all felt like it was swallowing me whole. The nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing her voice in my head. The words she had said that night, the finality of them, "I don't love you anymore." It was like a wound that never healed, never stopped bleeding. But then something changed. I don't know what exactly did it. Maybe it was the exhaustion from constantly replaying everything in my head, or maybe it was just the slow realization that revenge wasn't giving me the peace I craved. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the remnants of a dinner I hadn't touched, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jake. "I'm here if you need to talk." I stared at it for a moment. What was there to talk about? My life was in pieces, and no amount of talking would put it back together. But I needed something. I needed someone who hadn't abandoned me, someone who wasn't part of this mess. I picked up the phone and called him. "Jake," I said, the words coming out heavier than I intended. "I don't know what to do anymore. I thought that when this all happened, when Ethan fell apart, I'd feel something. But I don't. I just feel empty. Like all of it was for nothing." "David," Jake's voice was calm, steady. "You can't keep holding on to this. It's eating you alive." I rubbed my forehead. "I don't know how to let it go. I don't know how to move past it." You don't have to forgive them, man. Not now. Not yet. But you have to forgive yourself. For giving them a chance. For letting them in. You weren't wrong for loving her. You weren't wrong for trusting him. I let the words sink in, feeling a small spark of something shift inside me. I wasn't a victim. I hadn't failed by loving Sarah. I hadn't done anything wrong by trusting her. She had made her choices. And Ethan, he was just another part of the betrayal. But that didn't mean I had to live my life in their shadow. Maybe it's time to stop looking at their mistakes, Jake continued. And start looking at yours. You've got to decide what you want from your own life. Do you want to keep holding on to the past, or do you want to build something for yourself? The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was freeing. I hadn't thought about it that way. I had spent so long obsessing over them, trying to understand why they did what they did, that I forgot to think about what I needed. I took a deep breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could see a sliver of light ahead of me. I didn't need revenge to move on. I didn't need to keep punishing myself. I needed to take back control of my life. You're right, I said quietly. I don't know how to start, but I'll try. Jake's voice softened. One step at a time, and you've got this. I hung up, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't instant clarity. But it was a start. I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past. I wasn't going to keep letting them define me. I had my own life to rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, I could begin again. Stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the night. The city was quiet, the world moving on without me. But that was okay. I didn't need to catch up. I just needed to start moving again in my own direction. And that was the first step toward healing. The days that followed felt different. Lighter, somehow, though not in the way I had imagined. I wasn't free of the pain, not by a long shot, but there was a shift. I wasn't living in the past anymore, replaying every betrayal, every lie. I was starting to think about what came next. And that thought, strange as it was, gave me a sense of relief I hadn't felt in months. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the old anger flared up, when the bitterness of betrayal rose in my throat like acid. But each time I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. I wasn't going to let them control me. I hadn't spoken to Sarah in days. I didn't want to. I couldn't even look at her without feeling a deep, gnawing ache in my chest. But I had to face it. I had to face her, even if it was just for my own peace. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't even know if I had the strength to see her again, to hear her explain herself, or try to, again. But when my phone buzzed and her name flashed on the screen, I knew it was time. Can we talk? It read. I need to explain. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. She needed to explain? After everything she'd put me through, after what felt like a lifetime of lies. What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? But something inside me, something I wasn't ready to admit, urged me to meet her. Maybe it was that small piece of me still clinging to the hope that I could get closure. That I could hear it from her, directly. I couldn't move forward without that. So, I responded. Where? She replied almost immediately. I'll meet you at the park. In an hour. When I arrived at the park, I didn't see her at first. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the empty benches. It felt like the perfect setting for what we had to do. The end of something. The beginning of something new. I found her by the fountain, standing near the edge, her eyes focused on the water. She didn't hear me approach. For a moment, I just watched her, taking in the woman I used to love. She looked different now, tired, more fragile. Her shoulders were slumped, and her once confident posture had given way to something smaller, more vulnerable. Sarah, I said, my voice a little rough. She turned, her eyes widening slightly, but she didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me like she was waiting for me to speak. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I needed to. I don't know why you asked to meet, but I need to hear it. I need to hear you say the truth. Her eyes softened, and she took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, she seemed unsure of herself. I owe you that, she said quietly. I owe you everything. I took a step closer, my heart pounding, not because I wanted to fix anything with her, but because I knew I had to get this off my chest. So why? Why Ethan? Why destroy everything we had for him? Her voice cracked when she answered. I don't know. I don't have a good excuse. I didn't feel like I was living my life anymore. I felt stuck. And when he came into the picture, I thought I could finally feel alive again. I was selfish. And I'm sorry. The apology felt hollow, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I just stood there, letting the silence take over. We both needed this moment. We needed to say everything we hadn't said. I thought I knew you, I said after a long pause. But now I feel like I never did. The worst part isn't even the affair. It's that you couldn't even be honest with me. That you couldn't tell me when things started falling apart. You just let me believe in something that wasn't real. I know, she whispered. I was afraid. I didn't want to hurt you. I was so selfish, David. I've ruined everything. And I'll never forgive myself for that. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream at her, tell her everything she had done to me. But when I looked at her, something shifted. Something in me softened, just enough. She was broken. And while I couldn't forget what she'd done, I realized something else too. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and maybe that was the hardest thing to accept. She wasn't who I wanted her to be, but she was still someone who felt regret. Someone who wasn't above admitting her mistakes. You've ruined a lot, I said quietly. But I've got to let this go. I can't keep carrying it around. I can't keep holding on to you. Her face crumpled, and I could see the pain in her eyes. David, I wish I could change it. I really do. But I understand if you hate me. I don't hate you, I said, surprising myself. I can't hate you. But I can't love you either. Not anymore. We stood in silence for a moment, and I could feel the weight of everything that had happened between us. But somehow, it didn't feel like the end anymore. It felt like the beginning of something else, something I couldn't name just yet. But I knew it was mine. My choice, my future. I hope you find peace, I said, and I meant it. I hope you find what you're looking for. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, but she didn't say anything more. I turned to leave, but just before I walked away, I looked back one last time. She was still standing by the fountain, but this time, I wasn't looking at her as the woman I loved. I was looking at her as someone who had taught me a hard lesson. A lesson I would never forget. And as I walked away, I knew that I had finally taken the first step toward moving on.